Good evening, everybody. We're live. It's Wednesday night, February the 10th. I'm excited to see all you people. We are going to be talking about curiosity, how it killed the cat or kills the cat, or how the cat dies of and because of curiosity, why they might indeed only have 9 lives, why all dogs go to heaven. And then we'll talk about hydras, which is kind of cool, mythical animal. But more important than that is what the hydra kind of represents, or hydrogenesis. So we're going to just stop for a moment and take a look at one of my favorite magic cards. Like I was going to say, I'm going to talk about magic a little bit in every show. And we're just going to start off this show so you can see me clearly. It is called the Tolarian Academy. It gives you blue mana. In fact, 1 for each artifact you control. So a fact of art. And in fact, to Lernian Academy. So to learn Ian of Water Academy. So we'll go into why I think that's cool and how it relates, how it's relevant. And then we'll go into another card that's been kind of in the news recently. The reason why it's in the news is because there's another bigger card in the news. The Black Lotus just sold for $500,000, a signed Perfect 10 version on eBay. And the reason why it's so valuable is the oldest, most expensive card you can buy, pretty much. And so there's cards like it. They serve a similar function, but they're just not quite there. They're not perfect free like the Black Lotus is to play. You only just lose the 1 card out of your hand instead of playing a land and then playing it. You just get to play it for free without tapping any of your own resources to play it, which is kind of cool. However, the Lion's Eye Diamond requires you to discard your hand in order to play it. So it is also free, however, in exchange for the free money or mana, if you will, of any kind that you can spend in any combination. You have to give up all the rest of your cards in your hand. And that's why it does so well with zombie decks, with undead decks, where people are playing kind of out of the graveyard. And we'll kind of see how playing out of the graveyard versus playing out of the deck does different things and what it looks like on the field. And unfortunately, when you play Dredge with a zombie deck with Lion's Eye Diamond, no one's actually playing on the field until the end. They're all kind of in the graveyard, just kind of murmuring and rumbling about until they are released into the world by a sacrificial rite or card where you sacrifice 3 creatures in the field to bring forth this horde of zombies from the underworld. So the Lion's Eye Diamond is kind of analogous, you could say, to some of the underpinnings and pinnings of reality. So what it means. So kind of like when we're born into this world, we're born, we're given a hand. You said you're dealt a hand of cards. The only thing you can do is just play the hand that you've been dealt the best way that you can. Well, this gives you free mana for the expense of your entire hand. Okay, so you got to give up all your store of wealth that you have right now for a small trinket, whereas the other one before, you don't have to give up your store of wealth for a small trinket. Okay, so then we'll move on to how curiosity killed the cat. Now, we're going to be bringing a lot of stuff from the entertainment side of things into the math side of things, and then from the math side of things to the word side of things, and the letter of the word and the number of the letter and the letter of the number, and how that interacts with the actual picture. Okay, So when we start, we got to look at the function or the beginning um, of the of the universe. So the universe means to be one word, right, or one phrase of words. So if you're in a universe, you exist in one space of many verses, right? So different strings, if you will. Okay. Now those strings can be seen like dots. Okay, and these dots are they're they're pretty important because you are in fact a dot of energy, right? And so that dot, that quantum bit of pure light, right? So pure light is emitted from the sun, except light being a function of the universe and interacting with the universe, but not bound like the universe. What I mean by bound like the universe is I mean that hydrogen exists in the third dimension only as hydrogen gas or H2. Now, what that means is that H1 is a proton with an electron circling it, and it actually has been made. Everybody sees the ball, and then there's that nuclear symbol where there's one going around this way, one going around this way, and one going around this way. Well, those superposition of itself, so the electron gravitating around the proton, and the proton being like the other side of the switch, but also the source for the electron to revolve around and for it to revolve all around the electron. So when those meet in the world, those two hydrogen possibilities, they form a purple gas, and that is known as hydrogen. Okay, and that purple gas is kind of cool. My favorite color is purple, and that purple gas is the closest. Purple in the color spectrum is the closest to black, and then oppositely, gold is going to be the closest in the color spectrum to white, because what your spectrum is just a contrast of the light in contrast to the darkness of itself. So in order to get the broad array of light, we need to have something that refracts it to give us the contrast. Conversely, we also need an array of sound as well. And so when we get into sound and light, that's where we go back to the word or the book of the word or the word of the book. And what that means is that God said. So when God said, it means that the literal or the light or the light that is that begins is that sound wave. God said, let there be light. Okay, so that was one sentence, so it was one verse. Okay, so let there be light, so spoken light of being. Okay, so that gives you your perfect trinity, your first perfect trinity in which you are contained. Okay, so we have space, time, and matter, and then they are all together. Well, the whole thing together is a space-time unit or the building block. There's different names for this. The name is escaping me at the moment, but we'll keep moving on. Okay, so this hydrogen light. Now think of the sun. Inside the sun is all the unescaped potential, And outside the sun is all of the released potential. So inside we have the bound potential, and outside we have the unbound potential from that perspective. Now, from this perspective, we are the bound potential, and the sun is the unbound potential. But we have to look, where's the source? Are we the source of all light in the universe? Or is the sun the source of all light in the universe? Well, that's a really good question, because when we take a look, the light is what really creates everything with that sound. In fact, the vibrations of that proton and that electron are causing it to be in two places at once, so superimposed, right? So the vibration of the frequency of light. So as it's spitting out of the sun, right? Now, see, that vibration pins it to other elements, and then you have coherent compounds, you have coherent bonds. So from hydrogen, you have the genesis, so you will, or the hydrogenesis of everything else, like all the matter in the space, all the space in the time, and all the time in the matter. So they are a trinity or a triumvirate. So the three being four in total. So that's why we are three dimensions being pushed or kicked through time. We only experienced time because we are on the astral plane of existence, moving through space-time as matter together. Kind of like if you were thinking about moving your foot underneath the beds of the sheets of your bed and you're playing with the cat, you're going to move your foot from left to right and then from right to left, and they're just going to chase you back and forth. Well, essentially, what the Earth is doing in space-time is it's its own locality of time, and it's in a vacuum, and it's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. Well, that vacuum keeps you in that vacuum of space and time. So one of the things I believe Dr. Pi, that we talked about earlier in one of the last episodes about his patent for UFO technology, basically an over unity engine or device, and anti-gravity device, much less anti-gravity, but more of a localized vacuum space well in which the craft resides out of and apart from the local space-time. So if you can imagine three people, one standing next to the train as the train is stopped and somebody getting on the train. So there's a person on the train deck, and then there's the person in the train. And then let's say there's a person on top of the train, kind of like somebody who's trying to hitch a ride, right? Now, as the train starts moving, the person on the ground is going to be left where they are, and the train's going to go in this direction, causing time to elapse. And this person will eventually move, and their time will elapse, and we're on this planet, and time is elapsing. But that locomotive, that train, has a localized vacuum of space inside where the air isn't allowed in. It's pressurized cabin, if you will. And that's why you can throw a baseball in the middle of a moving train and the baseball acts like it's supposed to. It doesn't fly to your friend towards the back of the train at 60 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour. It's because you're in a localized vacuum. Now that looks like kind of a bullet or a loaf of bread or something that would go through space-time easily. It's long and it's got kind of a leading edge that disperses the space or the air around it evenly, or as evenly as possible, to reduce drag and create more efficiency and speed, allowing the ultimate operation to take place that we are using the transportation to get to, okay? So that transportation to get somewhere, when you think about a train and you think about UFOs, think about the Earth. Now, the Earth is also a spaceship. It has its own locality. So we have an ozone layer containing our spaceship, and it's containing all the gas inside this spaceship. And it's also providing the magnetic force field for all the harmful ultraviolet radiation and all the things from outer space that could come in and kill us or ruin our very nice habitat. Okay. So this nice habitat, like the inside of the train we are on. So, like the Snowpiercer, we want to take care of this train because it's the only train we have. And it's the biggest train we have. And it's a train that has its own fuel. And we can't stop it. That's for sure. Why would we want to stop it? We are all on the train together heading through space towards the center of the galaxy, like on the Galaxy Express. My favorite, I always go back to this, my favorite anime is Galaxy Express 999. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. So hydrogenesis is pretty cool. So when you have a trinity of trinities, then that allows for the building blocks of everything else to kind of come in down beneath it or in the sea. And so we're going to talk about the sea, and we're going to talk about the word, and we're going to talk about how it kind of all blends together. Now, if you excuse me for a moment, I just need to get to my notes. I did write a couple of poems for us. Now, those poems, they're kind of poems, but they're also just kind of stories. And it's a story, if you will, that just kind of takes us kind of on the path. And when we talk about the path, we talk about the way. And so we hear about the way in one of the most popular shows right now, and that's The Mandalorian. And The Mandalorian is this older guy, and he's kind of beat up, but he's really tough and he's really smart, and he's been around the world. He's very worldly, or he's a man of the galaxy, of the universe. And he is he's strong, and he has technology, and he has the ship, and he has Grogu with him. And Grogu's like this 50-year-old child with this immense potential. And he is this one of the last things that anyone know of, and they haven't seen one of these things in a really long time. And so they want to make sure that this child, this potential, is nurtured and kept away from dark, evil forces that would use his potential for evil and darkness and self-gain instead of gain for everyone, or instead of potential, realizing that potential for everyone. So that is kind of like there's a culminating point in the show where something really big happens, and I'm just gonna read right now. And I was trying to find the last draft, but that's okay. I have not found. It's all right. I'll just read from one of my rough drafts. Okay, so there once was a child atop his father's knee, listening to stories told by his father, he. Excited by the potential, like his father, he could only imagine what he would ever be. If he could ever be. Like his father was, he wants to know thee. So, up to the mantle, the father takes the child. To the child, the father says to he, once you view the glass, there's no turning back. We may be apart, but never without each other. From here on, I want you to go. If you want to go, it's with heavy heart I submit, for I'll be waiting your return. I love you. God be with you. Goodbye. So that was kind of like my interpretation of what happened there, and also kind of what happened here, right? With our Father. So once we step outside ourselves, we can see what we're made of. Time is the sail of the sea of space that the matter is sailing on. Okay? It is the fact. It creates the fact of the matter through time. It is the factor of the space-time matter. So when we think about bonds and we think about our sails and we think about what we're doing on this planet, what we're doing on this spaceship, we start to think of coherent bonds, right? So we're talking about hydrogenesis, coherent bonds, things that make sense versus things that don't. If you have all the material and all the matter in the world and you shove it in a clothes washer and then you throw it in the dryer, it's not going to pop out as something coherent. I'm sorry to tell you that. For all of you who believe in this chaos theory, it's ridiculous, okay? It's not coherent. 2 plus 2 is coherent. And 4, 2 plus 2, it makes 5 is not coherent. It doesn't cohere to the rule or the rule stick, okay, or the canon, okay? So we'll get back to this. So we're thinking about our bonds, okay? May our bonds and our sails be true to coherence, or be of true coherence. Sails, S-A-I-L, bonds with reality, okay, with the reality that we're sailing on and which we're bonded to, the seas we're sailing on, okay? Now, that sea that we're sailing on is made of coherence. It's coherent bonds. It's coherent reality. It's why we are conscious to begin with, because you can't have something make sense of something that isn't coherent. Okay, so when we take a look at what a coherent bond would be, we have to take a look at what happens with the superposition in the first place. So once we are with ourself in eternity, once we become us here and our shed or piece or quantit or quantum bit or quints of light, whatever you want to call it, once we are released or unbound from the sun into reality, we eject as a photon of potential. So we exist in reality, or this reality, when we spark in our conception. So when that spark happens is the genesis of the person. Okay, it's when the cell division starts happening, and the cell division starts happening because that spark is a coherent bond. It's the coherent bond between the ovum and the sperm. Okay, coherent bond, chicken or the egg, right? Well, we go back. So this leaves, we go through a glass, so to speak, and we're looking out of our own glasses, our own eyeballs, if you will. Except we have 3 eyeballs. We see with 2 when we're awake, and when we're asleep, we see with a different one. Okay? So when we're awake, we're here in this density below. And when we're asleep, we're awake in this density above. It's why you have to sleep. You can't not sleep or you will die. If you're trying not to sleep, you're trying not to maybe upload your secrets to the cloud, right? So bleach bit or something, right? So when we talk about our bonds, we want to talk about our bonds to each other, our bonds to our production, which is our time value, or our money that we create, which our money is created with creativity. It's why government is a net loss. It's because we pay all this money to the government, and then the government spends most of that money paying government employees who are acting as a function of the government and not a creative tool. And so they pay taxes that are from a creative instrument to begin with. Okay, so they're saying, well, we pay these government employees and then they pay taxes too, and this and that. No, if those government employees were involved in creative work and the government functions were automated with a perfect system, for instance, then everyone would be free to be creative. And in fact, true wealth would be actually created instead of stolen. We've lost 108 years, a little bit more than that, 111 years. And the reason why it's been 111 years is when the evil deed was done in 1910. So it was thought. So the evil deeds were conspired and brought into reality of mind and mind of reality in 1910, and then made official in 1913. So 111 years ago and 108 years ago, the difference of 3 years. Now 108 is a really special number, and so is 3. And then we'll continue. So when we talk about may our bonds and our sales be coherent, we're talking about our bonds to reality and the sail of reality, which we travel on, which is time space, right? So then we talk about may our bonds and our sales be true to coherence. We're talking about our bonds with each other and our sales to each other, okay? May they be of true coherence. Then may our bonds and our sales. So our sales, our selves, and our sales, or our souls, okay? Because we are we're a 5-dimensional creature traveling through 3D space in 4D time, because we're projected from above down into this density, okay? So when you close your eyes, you're not receiving light in, you're pushing back. And when your eyes are open, and then you're watching something from above while you're sleeping here. And then when you're awake here, you're watching here from above. Okay. So may our bonds and our cells, our cellular bonds, our sale bonds, so the bonds with time, our sales are bonds with each other, and our souls are bonds with God. Okay, kind of creates a cool little cross there inside of a little circle. Okay, a lot of things make cool crosses inside little circles. So may our bonds and our sales, say L's, right? So L, be to true coherence with him and her, herence, henceforth, and hereafter. Hereafter. Reef, tear. So he reef the tear. Heal the reef of tears. Mend the heart, and the heart will be with man. Okay? So we must mend our hearts and break our bonds of iniquity in order to move into the next density, in order to graduate to the next realm. And there's going to be a false dichotomy. There's going to be a false option. And what I mean by that is that option is going to be presented to you as everlasting life. And this everlasting life in entertainment we see, there's a show on Amazon Prime, and that has to do with what I'm talking about. Now, what happens when we're offered eternal life in a construct? Well, is that the construct of what we're made in, or is it that the construct of which is made from us? So since we are in the third dimension, we can only construct things of the second dimension and then replay them to ourselves with the help of the electricity from the highest dimension. Okay, so we're harnessing this power, we're plugging it into something so we can make it work and tell a story, right? Well, something's plugged into us, making it work to tell a story, right? Except this works kind of in one way. So the further you get from God, the more control the creations in creation will have over you. So what I mean by that is don't let your spark of awe be sold or controlled or manipulated by a technological oligarch under and in a sea of servers which they control and can delete, modify, and contain. Okay? You don't want to go to a matrix of man's creation within the construct because it's de-meaning. It's of less meaning. We are actually dividing what we are into a further confined spot, further away from the other way. Okay? Now you don't want your divine spark of light trapped in a hard drive forever. Now, what would happen to you? I don't want to even know. It sounds like a prison hell, right? Except in that prison hell, you're not going to be wet. You might not necessarily have a taste or smell. You may not necessarily have some of these things coded in because they're not the true coder. They're making another image or another lattice to put you behind of to contain an outside and away from. Okay, so good evening to all the wakeful out there and not all those who are awake still sleeping. Now, when we talk about a wake, we are a piece in God's wake. Do we want to get further from the wake and further spread out? Or do we want to get closer to the wake and closer together? I would rather be closer to you. I would rather be closer to all of us and closer to the warmth and light and truth. Wouldn't you? Now I know that this might sound kind of crazy, but because we can construct something beneath us, that's an illustration, shadow, or lattice of what we are experiencing. So says we are also in a construction or lattice that we are also experiencing. And because we have math and because we have numbers and language, we're given these numbers and language, and then they were confounded. And now we have to make the trip back. So our language was confounded, and we went deep down into a pretty dark abyss as humanity. And then we've had to come back together and refound our language together so we can have the perspective of polarity so we can then jump to the next level of hyperdensity. So in this density, there are 5 platonic solids. In the next density, there are more platonic hypersolids. There's like 7 or 6. There's more building blocks. It's a higher frequency, more stuff happens. And so when we take a look at numbers, we take a look at odd numbers and even numbers. And odd numbers are a state of what you would call or they're irrational. I mean, they're irrational. And the reason why is because we can create all sorts of things and functions with odd numbers. And then the even numbers are rational because they give us a whole or a sum that's evenly divided. Okay. Now, you can evenly divide a bunch of things. However, we'll get to the basic shorthand of it. And we'll just do a nice, let's say, if you have a pen and paper and you want to follow along, now would be the best time. If you want to take notes for pen and paper. But we'll just start. And what I mean is what I mean. It's the meaning of everything. So we are going to start with 0 and 1. and the superposition. Okay? So we'll make 1 instead of a 0. So 1/3 of something times 3 equals 1 whole of something. Now, 1 divided by 3 equals 0.3 to infinity and beyond. Now, 1/3 times 3 is 1. Now, 1 divided by 3 times 3 is not 1. It is 0.99999 forever and to infinity. That looks a little strange. And the reason why is this is a whole order. It's a whole order. This is not a whole order. It's a whole order in parentheses, restructured. Okay? In parentheses. Okay? So in parent C's, in parenthesis, in parent thesis, okay? Or in parents parentheses, right? So in the parent C's. Okay, what are we? We are of the parent. Or a. Okay, of. We are of the parent. Parent in parentheses. Okay. When we talked about the word coming first, this is literally what it means, because it binds and it binds it away. Okay. So what we are doing is we're dividing away by the smallest fraction that we can come to. Okay. And that smallest fraction, right, 0.33333 times space, time, and matter equals us, or existence in some way. And what I mean by that is that we are offset, or we are a set below, right? So this is a whole, and this is not whole. So we are missing the 0.0001 to infinity. Well, how does that make sense? Well, I believe it's because the 1 and the 0 are superimposed, right? So when you have a superposition, you have this. When you have a position, you have this. So God is superimposed over us through the word and the math. Okay? So we are in his construct, or we are structed within. Okay? Or we are without his last piece, any way you want to look at it. Okay? Now, we'll come back to that with the math in just a moment. But if we take a look at, like, let's say what a father would say to his newborn son, like Grogu or anyone else. Goo that grows. It's kind of funny. Goo that grows. Hilo, small one. Okay? Small hilo, or piece of the helios, or the sun. Okay? The sun of the sun. S-O-N of the S-U-N. Okay? Now, When we say that name, when we say that out loud, hello, small one, we make it a fact in time. We actually stated a fact by saying hello to another fact in time. So when we say something in time and we speak it below into time, out of time, it is in the parentheses of the word and the light and the action below. Okay, it's kind of like when you go play a video game. What's your score at the end? You end the game, you come back out into reality, and you continue on with your responsibilities. Okay, I believe we are here to learn because we have yet to really grow up and have true perspective, because the battle for good and evil takes place above in the next dimension and below in the dimension below us. Okay, so now recognized in the parent sees the child. Okay, in the sea. So now the parent sees the child in the sea. Okay, so was now once one saw. Okay, was now one, no, was now once. Okay, so he once was. So we're talking about time. Once you become, you're a once or an instance or a superimposed coincidence. Okay, you're not a coincidence because you were created with thought of your parents. Was one once one saw. Once we saw, we won. Okay. Just a little bit of ramblings of a crazy person, yours truly, maybe not so crazy. I'm just going to read to you. A small ball on top of the spaceship accelerator stick. Forward through time, it gets pushed. He wants to separate the craft from time. So he wants to take the ball on top of the time accelerator and the space accelerator ship. He actually he unscrews it. He unscrews the ball from the pole of the accelerator because he wants to spend more time and play with his father, Mando. Okay? He wants to separate the craft from time so he can stay with his father, but his father is fighting much larger battles. And over and for the infinite potential of the child. The child has great power and also knows to trust the father, even if it means not eating frogs from that special case before. And it seemed just like the frog that I ate when we were on that planet with the cool chick, right? Now, but he didn't necessarily know what was going on. Now, without the knowledge, we do inconceivable harm. So Grogu eating those eggs was doing inconceivable harm. The last two of that race of frog people, and those were the only eggs that were even left. And he was sneaking them, It's bad news, right? And so without the knowledge of those people being persons, he was unknowingly, with ignorance, killing autonomous intelligence. However, the image of perspective is written on the heart, lighting the way. So we must have a good influence. We must have a fatherly influence, and we must have a motherly influence. We must know good and bad, and we must be able to trust our hearts and trust what's written on our heart to let us light the way. And in fact, many rules are broken when the way is lit for those to travel, like taking off your helmet and showing your true face, okay? And showing your love and showing your tears for the child, because they won't always be together, okay? We have some hydrogenesis drawings here. I'll just show you the hydrogenesis drawing, okay? I kind of made a cool proton man drawing. So the superimposed proton man, right? I also did want to do a little bit for you guys who are, not maybe necessarily way out there in space like I am. So I brought us down to the Super Bowl, and I am not a football guy. I know kind of most of the rules for football, and I know a lot of the names, and I understand how it's played and that sort of thing. But we'll get into my football 2021 Super Bowl analysis. Okay, so like I mentioned, I'm claiming that everything means something, and that everything has deeper meaning and higher meaning. We just have yet to uncover it because, again, our word was confounded. And in fact, and sometimes there's more than three meanings to a word. Often there's three meanings. Very little or very seldomly is there only one meaning or the same meaning for one word. One of these meanings, or one of these words, are justice, or is justice. Justice is self-defining. You need not put any word in front of it to augment its true nature and meaning. Like social, for instance. Social justice is vitiated by justice because it inherently adds inequality or division to a unified fact. Okay, diversity training is the biggest crock of crap ever perpetrated. What we really need is unity training. I digress. Here we go. Super Bowl analysis, February 10th, 2021. The Super Bowl. Well, the Super Bowl we reside in is the solar system that our sun sits in. Okay. Now, it's kind of interesting that our Super Bowl is LV, right? So it was, or was it, whichever one it is. I think it's, anyway, it kind of a couple nuances there. But LV or VL, love or vile. I think that's kind of like what I was getting the hint of a little bit. However, the teams were the Buccaneers and the Chiefs, and the score was 31-9. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to break down the names and the score, and then the attachments of meaning thereof. Okay, so first we're going to start with 31. 3 and 1, 1 and 3. The triumvirate, or the triumvirate of 1. Kind of how we were talking about. Okay, now we have 1 3 3 1. Okay, or 3 1 1 3. Okay. Now, the Buccaneers, I was brainstorming. I was thinking like one-eyed Jack, because 21, blackjack, right? Well, there's 21 million Bitcoin. So that's kind of cool for that little connection there. Blackjack 21, you win against the house that's stacked against you. Okay. Super Bowl, the court where Americans determine who's better, who wins, right? Okay. Buccaneers, Chiefs. All right. So what I get, one-eyed Jack, blackjack, Buccaneers. Okay. Buck canners, people who can the dollar. Okay. Canning the buck. Okay. We're gonna can the buck, right? The Bitcoin. You can buy a Toyota Tacoma for 1 Bitcoin or Tundra for 1 Bitcoin. Okay. I want that can. Okay. I want the money that can, not the money that can't. Okay. I want the money that performs, not the money that doesn't perform. Okay. So, buck canners, canning the buck. BC, Buccaneers, Bitcoin miners. Okay. Of the cross, right? Okay. of the cross. Bones, right? So now we have the other score, the losers. So the Buccaneers won 31 points. Great numbers, great name. From Florida, where it's nice and warm, where we want to take vacations. I went to Busch Gardens there. I pet a giraffe. I fed a giraffe. It was amazing. I had more fun in Busch Gardens in Florida than I've had in a really long time. And the time I had been before that was when I was 18. I really wanted to go back. Okay, parents took me there long ago, and the splash park across. Okay, so then we have 9, which is a single-digit number. They didn't even get into double digits. They suck that bad. Now the Buccaneers got double digits, and they got the 2 best digits, and in one of my opinion, because it kind of represents us a little bit and where we are. Now 9 is, we're going to talk about, is a single-point game. It's the last number of numbers. 0 isn't a number, it's a placeholder. Okay, 0 is not a number, it's a placeholder. Get it through your head. Okay. Now 9, single digit. Chief. They're the chiefs, right? Well, chief in a society is a single authority residing and ruling above all. It's not an even society. Chiefs are chiefs of empires, not nations. Nations are of people who are equal, again, endowed with the rights of our creator, all, right? All equal, okay? Chiefs, the fact that there would be a chief, right, kind of instigates the fact that there would be people under the chief, and then people under them, and then varying arrays of authority, titlehood, and control. And with control comes power, and with power comes corruption, and with complete control and power comes complete corruption, okay? In a negative debtor system, or in any negative system that's designed to drain wealth from individuals as opposed to provide wealth that we have an abundance of, okay, inside of us. Our wealth is our art, what we create in this world. It's what we create. It's our art, okay? Now we have, my art is of talking. Lost the Super Bowl and crazy stuff like this. Okay, they lost it. They lost the Super Bowl. They lost the solar system. They lost the Earth. They lost the bowl. They don't have the football anymore. They literally had to give us the football. Okay, they had to give us the trophy. They had to give the Buccaneers the trophy. And the kind of cool thing about the trophy is it's shaped kind of like the way you would look into the universe. A bowl, and there's even a ladder on top. It's cut in half. There's a hemisphere. It's kind of egg-shaped, right? And it has that ladder in which we grip. We have a tight grip on that ladder, and we throw it away. We want to climb the ladder. So we have the ball now, and we have the ladder, and we have the bowl, okay? The Buccaneers. That buck, the corrupt system, okay? So what do we think of when I think of Kansas City? I think of that place where those people paid my paychecks late when I worked for the government, the Kansas City Pay Center. That thing is bankrupt. Bankrupt, corrupt. Where's all our money? Where's 111, 108 years? Where did it all go? Why are we $158 trillion in unfunded liabilities? Why are we I haven't looked today, 27 or 28 trillion dollars in debt? To who? Right? So Kansas City Pay Center is kind of like an allegory for the football game and the team that played it and the city they're from. They lost. The center there is, there's no center. It's a bankrupt, right? Okay, so it's basically been buckled, right? They got buckled. They buckled under their own weight and their own pressure and their own, I didn't watch the game, but I would imagine their own chaos and own dismay and their own lies and their own unwillingness to work with each other on the field, their own unwillingness to be a unified force for good on the field, is the same way the military has been with our money in the field. They have not reflected our values on the world. They've drone striked them to death. Okay, and and there's better ways to do things. Okay, and the first way we're going to do this is by enlightening everyone. Okay, bringing light to all. Okay, so these were the winners. These guys were the losers. These guys got buckled, and the pirates took back, or the Buccaneers. They're not the pirates, they're the Buccaneers. They took back what was theirs, right? This is symbolic of taking back control, taking back the football, okay? Now, you notice that 3 and 1. Well, 1 and 2 make 3. Okay, so 12 and the team make the whole. 1 plus 2 is 3, and then 1 plus 3 is the 4. Okay, the force, the forwards. Okay, the forwards forward, the forward verse. Okay. All right, we're going to go just kind of look back at this again. We have 1/3 of a whole times 3 equals 1. 1 divided by 3 in parentheses, okay, times 3 equals less than 1. Okay. C of forever underneath, okay, in the parentheses of the word, in the parentheses of the word, the light, and the sound. And that's what creates our vibration. And that what creates our reality through hydrogenesis. Okay. So I'm going to just read a little bit of some of my notes here from the hydrogenesis note taking that I did today. A ray of light turns into an array of light, as in not a ray of light. So we talked about being not, or of, okay? It's of and then not the same. A ray of light cast, okay, from this dimension into this dimension, okay, becomes an array of light, or an array of sound, or an array of matter, or an array of time, or an array of lifetime. The matter of lifetime, the matter of your life in time. Okay? Now, when we think of an array of matter, array of light, array of frequency, these are another, they're contrast. They're a sea of contrast. Now, you have to have a physical space or relationship or coherence for all these things to exist all the time. Therefore, you must have parent lattices or parent traps. Another entertainment cue. Okay, parent traps or lattices to keep the twins away from each other. Okay, and the reason why is if they come together, they'll collide, and their world will explode. Right. So now the shows and they have different story arches, and they flip the story around and they mix and pick. Okay, but you got to unmix and pick, and you got to take that Rubik's Cube and you got to start turning it back and find the code. So any color that's facing our 6-sided square, right, inside, like a Rubik's Cube on the outside, we can turn backwards. We can see the colors and where they are and the patterns in which they exist, and we can find our way back to unity. I believe this. And I believe we've already done this. That is Dr. Pi's patent. And because Dr. Pi's patent exists, and because we have secret government agencies and Area 51 and Groom Lake and over Unity machines now, and localized vacuum creating machines for us to sit in, which would be floating or floating through space, this would be the way that we truly exit the Earth and are able to maintain stability in space. And the reasons, there's probably many reasons for that, like emissions, explosions, all sorts of things that could be a consequence of not of technology that's not coherent to the structure or complementary to the structure. Okay, so our Earth, as we spin around the sun, as we spin around our own axis, and as the sun satellites us, okay, and as we orbit the sun, we're moving as a spaceship through space-time. And so what I really believe Dr. Pi did is he looked at the Earth and he looked at it for what it really is and looked at what we are for what we really are. And then he reverse engineered spacecraft components and ideas to model after the Earth going through space. Okay, so when we can create a localized space-time, that also means we can create a localized space-time, right? And so that helps us out of the third density. So when you're not moving on the fabric of space-time, if you're staying stationary, if you have no weight or gravity affecting you, are you really affected by time the way we are here? Because we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. I seem to wonder sometimes how the spin or distance density would affect our lifespans or our perception of our lifespans, okay, or the meaning. And so, there's a lot of stories, and I'll just kind of wrap it up with this about things that happened on the moon when we first got there, things that moon dust does here, and many other consequences of light in this reality. So I am going to move here over to any chats, see if we have any questions, and then we'll let you go. It's been an hour, okay? But what I really want you guys to know is that you are a piece of God. You are a son or daughter of God, an infinite potential chosen by your parents and their parents before them, and on so forth unto the first children of God and the first pieces that were placed here. And so coherent bonds of something cannot exist in a sub-reality without a super reality from which to be manipulated and created from. So there is a God, there's mathematical proof of God, you are proof of God, we are proof of God. I love you all. Have a good night.